Hey everybody, and welcome to How to Become a Freelancer in 30 Days. This is Anthony Chatfield, and you're watching Day 7. Today we're going to talk about how to identify your brand and determine how people will find you and what you will be known for. This is one of those few things that a lot of freelancers don't spend much time doing, and I will be the first to admit that I did not do it for many years myself. Honestly, I didn't really get into this as much until I had started my agency and was selling something a little bit bigger. And I really wish I had done it earlier, for a lot of reasons. Here you can see a picture of my blog where I regularly post articles about marketing and productivity. And I still to this date get requests to do work for people, and I don't really freelance much anymore. Back in the days when I did, this would have been fantastic. So one of the things I've put together here is kind of a rundown of some of the stuff you can do to build your brand and make sure people find you when they're looking for you and find the stuff you want them to find. And more specifically, that all the things you do will help you find new work. Okay? So we're going to be establishing the core brand you will use to promote your services and offerings online, whether that's your name or the name of a business or whatever it ends up being. We're going to choose or start the process of choosing a business name and website domain. And then we're going to evaluate business potentials of your freelance efforts. This is all kind of that early on stuff. You know, ideally you're in the background, you're bidding, you're looking at stuff on Elance, but you're also now going to start looking at ways to build out a larger business and hopefully automate this to some degree so people start finding you instead of you having to go find them. All right. So one of the first things you have to do is prioritize your day with an action plan. This is kind of stepping out of today a little bit, but it's something I really wanted to talk about because I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. And, I know it's a 30-day plan. And part of the problem with a 30-day plan is that you want to jam a lot into it. But realistically, you only have so much time every day. I'm assuming that you have a job, you have other responsibilities, and you're trying to learn how to do this and slowly ramp your way into it. And you can't just not bid on work or write things or design things on days when you're currently working on this. So before we continue, you want to start breaking down your time each day. And the first priority is always going to be to complete any paid work you have on the docket. Getting that work done as quickly and as efficiently as possible is one of the easiest ways to build your reputation as a freelancer. You'll get repeat work, you'll get referrals, you'll get good feedback. You got to do it. So don't put off doing good work just to build your business. It should always be your first priority. Priority number 2 is promoting your services. And that's going to be things like bidding on new projects on Elance. It's going to be adding pages to your website. It's going to be promoting yourself through social media, whatever it ends up being, maybe networking events after work. This is how you're going to get people to find you and actually hire you to do stuff. And then third is building your business. And while today that's what we're talking about, it's not the top priority on any given day. So I want to talk about it early. I know we're still in the first week of the program, but I don't want you necessarily to be doing this first. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but hopefully that makes sense. We just don't want to miss the boat in terms of actual income opportunities to build out a business. It's going to take a little bit more time than 30 days to build that business, but now is when we start laying those roots. All right? So first things first, let's move on. That's kind of my little de facto disclaimer to get going here. But let's move on with today's stuff. Let's talk about choosing a business name. How are people going to know you and your services? So building a business does not have to be done today. The key is to think of your efforts as a business, not just another side project. I've said this like 3 times. I'm going to keep saying it. Apologies in advance. I can be a broken record on some things for good reason. If you hear it multiple times, assume it's for good reason. And then think about how people will identify you. When you're online, you're not interacting with a human being directly. You're not talking to them. You're not seeing them. You're writing something, they're reading it. It's very indirect. So you need to build a brand, something that people can remember you by. Some way for them to immediately identify the quality and purpose of what you're doing without having to jump through all the extra hoops. You also want to be telling a story, whether it's your story or your business's story or some story that you've developed that you feel is going to help sell what you do. And it all starts right here with building a business and choosing a name. So the name should be catchy and simple. If you want something original or unique, check to see if it's been trademarked already in your country. Most countries will have some kind of database you can search for to check for trademarks. Usually the easiest way is to see if the domain is available. If the domain is available, it's probably not trademarked. And if all else fails, use your own name. It's really easy, and you don't have to worry about trademarks or any of that. It's your name. You own it. And you can brand pretty much anything. So you don't have to be too clever. You don't have to come up with a brand new name. You don't need the Amazon logo. You don't need, to be Google, some made up thing. You just need to be memorable. And whether that's very specific to what you do or it's more specific to your name, that's the goal. All right. And then step 2 of that is to choose a website address. You want to use a .com. So as you choose your name, make sure it's available as a .com. You want to match your company name as closely as possible. Ideally, it's an exact match. So probably don't want to pick a name that's too short or too general. Keep it as short as you can. This is a mistake I made with a couple of my business names. A little bit too long, hard for people to remember. Trying to keep it succinct and to the point. And then when it is time to buy your domain, I always used GoDaddy. It's easy, it's quick, it's affordable. I don't really like the business very much, having worked with them for a few years, but I've never had a problem. So it is, if you're looking for reliable and easy, that's a big company. They're not going anywhere. Another one that falls into that group is Network Solutions, about as big. So if you want a big one that you can trust, that's the way to go. One caveat to that, when you buy your domain name, don't buy the hosting there. We're going to buy hosting somewhere else. It's one of those simple things you got to do just to protect your website and protect yourself. If there's a problem or you want to cancel down the line, you don't want it to be pain. So domain name will live one place, website will live somewhere else. For now, though, we're looking at buying the domain name. One more thing on this, too. If you don't have the money for it and a domain name costs $15, $20 or so, not a big deal. This is not the first thing you need to do. You can also start with a free website somewhere that doesn't require a domain name. You can use Wix or Squarespace. They'll give you free space to get going, or even WordPress.com. The goal is to have a space online, and that's really the purpose of all this. Long term, though, you want to be able to buy that website address and build a site on it. But if you aren't doing that in the first 30 days, 100% makes sense. You want to save that money. You want to see how this goes. But it's something to keep in mind. I would still do the research and make sure it's available. All right. And then in terms of long-term business potential, keep in mind the long-term business potential of your brand. Make sure it's something you can use in various areas. If you want to grow in different areas, don't be too specific. For example, my first business, I named it Seattle Freelance. I was so proud of that name because it was the most descriptive thing you could possibly pick. I got seattlefreelance.com. You can actually still go there. It's up. And I lived in Seattle and I did freelance. It was amazing. I got work out of that just because it existed. The problem is that when I moved to New York and started my agency, I wasn't in Seattle anymore, and B, I wasn't freelancing anymore. So I had to start a new business. I left Seattle Freelance behind. I let the license lapse, and I started a new business, Great Leap Studios, that allowed me to build an agency on top of the freelancing I had been doing. So if you plan on doing something more with it, try to think in advance. If you don't yet, that's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Starting a new business is not really that much work, surprisingly. But if you do plan on doing something additional with it, even in the next year or two, try to think of something a little more open-ended that you can use to build from there. All right. So that's everything for today. Today's actions, what I want you to do, create a very simple priority plan for the next week. If you have your first project, make sure that's at the top. Make sure you leave time every day to bid on new projects. Make sure you leave time every day to work on building out your platform. And then start thinking about the business naming process. You don't need to pick a name right away, especially if you're not ready to buy a website address. But start thinking about it, start asking around, start brainstorming ideas. You have lots of time, but if you don't use that time, eventually you're just going to have to do it for something silly like taxes. So you might as well get it started now. You have a lot of time to work on it and think of something really good. All right, so that's everything for today. Make sure you leave any comments or feedback or questions you have here with this episode. If you have any additional feedback from me directly, feel free to reach out, and I will absolutely get back to you as soon as possible. And make sure to leave a rating for the course. I'd absolutely appreciate it. That's everything for day 7. Next up is day 8, and look forward to talking to you tomorrow. All right, thanks.